The video you're going to see on the next slide is of our GBS 2006 Israel trip going down into what you're seeing right here in this picture, the traditional location of the synagogue in Nazareth. And likely where you see the cloth draped object at the front is the location where Jesus would have stood to read the scroll of Isaiah, found Isaiah 61, and read, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor." And then after reading that would have sat down to the side there and explained to the people in the synagogue. And we'll see a short clip here of the group going down in there. It'll be kind of dark, but this lets you know the area we're going into.
And here's the entrance. He just opened it up for us. He had just closed it, and we got him to open it up for us. Donations welcome. So it's pretty dim. We'll see how the lighting does once we go inside.
Okay. If all of you will move around, and there's another group coming in, if you move and take a seat toward the front.
You can sit on the steps, you can sit here, you can sit anywhere you find a place.
What the camera is zooming in on now is the place where the Torah scrolls would have been kept during the time of Jesus.
It's got a light that he's turning on there, but it's not quite on yet. I may try again once that light warms up. It's a halogen bulb. Okay, so that is the synagogue in which Jesus, as far as we can tell, in which Jesus read Isaiah 61. He was handed the scroll here in section 45, and he rolls it open to the place where it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are downtrodden, and to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord." And he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. Now, this gives you a little feel of how their way of doing service was different than ours. We tend to stand up to speak. He stood up to read and sat down to teach. Okay, so I take it then that posture in public services is a matter of tradition, not a matter of biblical requirement. You can sit down to preach or teach just as well as you can stand up. And he said, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." And they thought that was pretty good. They liked that. And are speaking well of him. And, wow. You can just hear all the murmur of approval in the synagogue. And, this is great. Is this not Joseph's son? And so then he goes on and say, "No doubt you will quote this proverb to me, 'Physician, heal yourself. Whatever we heard was done at Capernaum, do here in your hometown as well. Truly I say to you, no prophet is welcome in his hometown. But I say to you, in truth, there were many widows in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the sky was shut up for 3 years and 6 months, when a great famine came over all the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them, but only to Zarephath, in the land of Sidon, to a woman who was a widow. And there were many lepers at the time of Elisha. None was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. And all were filled with rage when they heard these things." Now, for a long time, that just kind of surprised me. Well, what's everybody upset about? Okay, I mean, he just told them stories they already know. He didn't say anything different than the Old Testament said. What's everybody so upset? Well, they get the point, and I wasn't getting the point. Okay? The point is that God's people didn't deserve God's messengers. And so God's messengers didn't do anything for God's people. They did it for the Gentiles. A Sidonian widow and a Syrian general. They're the ones who got the blessing of God. In other words, you Jews are unworthy of me, the prophet, who has just announced that Isaiah 61. And in response to that, they're enraged, which I think teaches us something here. People are fickle. Do not derive your sense of success or self-worth from others' approval, because it can change in 2 minutes. All you got to say is the wrong thing, and they're ready to take you and throw you over a cliff. Okay? You guys may laugh now. It's painful when they have grabbed you and hustled you up to the edge of the cliff. Okay. So, I guess I just explained this. Sometimes speaking the truth will enrage people, but you need to have Proverbs 23:23 as part of the bedrock of your commitment. You are going to buy the truth and sell it not. It doesn't matter whether people like the truth, whether the truth is popular. You are going to be a person of truth. And if that becomes part of the bedrock of your commitment, then you're not tied into your particular little tradition of Christianity. You're not tied into your location in Christianity. You're tied to the truth. And you're going to follow the truth wherever the truth takes you. Now, there's of course a certain humility that needs to be joined with this commitment to the truth. That is, that I, one person, am not sufficient on my own to discern all the truth. And therefore, I am in need of brothers and sisters in the body to help me see that. All right.
This clip begins with a view of a barren cliff, the modern city of Nazareth in the background. The cliff overlooks the Jezreel Valley that will be seen later. The cliff is about 2 miles from Nazareth and is reputed to be the brow of the hill from which Jesus was to be thrown. Next, the Jezreel Valley comes into view. The distant hill rising in the mist in the valley is Mount Tabor, scene of Deborah and Barak's battle against the Canaanite king of Hazor. Next, the high hills in the distance are those of Moreh, where Gideon attacked the Midianites. The camera looks to the south and a road that crosses the valley. It goes to Megiddo. Turning, the western end of the valley comes into view. As the helicopter completes its circle, the brow of the hill and the Nazareth Ridge are again seen.
Okay, so if that was the place, indeed, then that was quite the cliff. You would be in bad shape if you get tossed off that. Okay, so that's a feel. When we're in the Gospels, it's so easy to just hear the Gospel names and not be in tune with, oh, there's Mount Tabor, and that's where Deborah and Barak, and they're over there, that's Gideon, and you're just walking through thousands of years of biblical history. It's not far away, it's close at hand, and that's one of the exciting things about being in Israel. You get the feel of that. Section 46 tells us that Jesus moves his family from Nazareth up to Capernaum, and Matthew identifies this as a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy that they that sat in darkness have seen a great light, the land of Zebulun and Naphtali. And this is the area around the west side of the Sea of Galilee. In section 47, we get the first call of the four, walking beside the seashore. Jesus says, "Follow me." So, We saw back in section 31 the introduction of the disciples to Jesus, and they came with him up to that marriage at Cana. And the reason they came with him is that was where they were from anyway. It was just as natural to follow Jesus back to Galilee since they were going there. But they were not in full-time discipleship relationship with him at that point. Here he calls them to be fishers of men, but it's not actually the full-time service call. That's going to show up in section 51. So I think this is interesting, how we tend to present the call of God on a person's life as a direct speaking of God in a discernible, clear way that, boom, you know that you've been called. And yet Jesus' relationship with his own disciples was one of gradual acquaintance and of ministry association before he eventually then names the 12. Okay? And so I think that should give us a sense of encouragement that it's not like one day they were pulling nets out of the sea without a thought about ministry, and this guy walks by and says, "Follow me." And they say, "Well, sure, I'm out of here. Who cares about fishing nets in all my life? And here I go." No. There was God working in their lives to bring them to the point where they were ready to respond to that call for full-time service. In section 48, we get the story of the healing of the demoniac. And one of the things that just blew the people away with Jesus' teaching was that he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Okay? And remember that the scribes' mode of teaching was to concatenate rabbinic